Hello everyone, welcome to Christian Emotional Recovery. I'm your host, Rachel Leroy, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful beginning of the year. I hope you've had a blessed season, Christmas season, a blessed New Year, and a blessed winter. And as we slowly start to move into spring, I hope that your life is also renewed with new life. I just wanted to do another update to the podcast because I've been delayed in putting out my podcast episodes, and there are several reasons for that. But I don't want to get into that too much. One of the things is that a lot of you know that I have chronic health issues. And while I try not to let that interfere with the podcast, sometimes it does impact my ability to be productive. This time last year, back in January, I caught COVID and I was incapacitated for several weeks. And then I got a cold, which doesn't sound like much, but when you have autoimmune, it can incapacitate also. And so I had some issues. I continued to make the podcast, even though it slowed me down. And this year, in early February, I got COVID again. And thank God that we live in the era where we have antivirals and medications like that. So I took those antivirals and it did help prevent a lot of the long COVID, even though I have had a lot of issues as well. And so I've just been trying to slow down and focus on my health and focus on my mental health. And I want to be transparent and honest with you. The last few months have been very difficult for me because I've been having a lot of issues in my personal relationships. I've been having a lot of issues with what's going on in the world. I've been having issues with my health because of the stresses of those. And I've been rethinking what my priorities are in life and what I want to do and what I'm able to do. And the fact is creating this podcast has cost me a lot. And like I said, I'm not complaining. I've always loved it. It's the labor of my life. It's the joy of my life. But I'm paying out of my pocket, and I'm paying using time that I might be working and earning money. And I'll be honest, I'm struggling financially somewhat. I'm blessed. God is good to me. I have a roof over my head. I have food to eat. I can pay most of my bills most of the time, and I'm thankful for all of those things. I have cars that get us from A to B most of the time, and I don't want to get into that, but I just wanted to say that it's not adding up for me anymore to continue to do the amount of the podcast that I am. I have had financial support in the past, which I am grateful for. I'm so grateful. Nobody's ever obligated to give, ever, to the podcast. But at the same time, the financial support, the consistent financial support has dried up. And I have let people know that I need the help. And unfortunately, that help has not come. I have prayed about the podcast for the last 4 or 5 years and asked God to give me a leg up, either a better paying job or financial support or a way to monetize the podcast. And unfortunately, 2 out of 3 of those have been unanswered prayers. I have been looking for a job. I've actually cut back on spending any time developing the podcast, and I've made getting a part-time job in itself, because that's the only way it's going to happen. One reason it's taking me a while is because when I had some interviews lined up, I ended up getting COVID and I lost those opportunities. And so my health has slowed that down some. And then a lot of it has also been I've been working on a career change, changing fields to something that pays better, quite frankly. Something I can enjoy, but something that pays better. I don't want to go into all these gory details of my personal life, but I just wanted to give you an update that this year I probably won't be putting out nearly as many podcast episodes or YouTube episodes because I need to focus on my life too. And a lot of what I've been doing, I teach, but I still have to work on it myself. And I'll be honest, my relationships are a disaster, a lot of them. And I'm working on that. And I realized that the patterns that I grew up with and what I was taught, when you are in a situation where you're treated a certain way and where you're regarded a certain way and where you are taught to fit a certain family role, it becomes conditioned into you so much that the future relationships you have, you continue to attract and have those same kinds of relationships in people that aren't just your close family. So what happens is that you learn to find people unconsciously. We don't do it on purpose, but it's what we feel comfortable with. And sometimes we'll even consciously try to avoid it and then somehow still fall into the trap. That's how tricky it is. That's what happened to me. That a lot of the people that are in your life later, some of them are left over from that earlier time period, right? Parents, siblings, cousins, friends, colleagues, neighbors that you had from earlier in childhood that you may still have in your life. They're still seeing you as that older person that is unhealed. And then maybe when you're around them, those older patterns actually come out because that's the old pattern. Those people are associated with those old patterns, right? Is that completely their fault? No. And there might even be well-meaning people in your life that you love and that love you, but because you have accepted certain kinds of treatment and not even been consciously aware because those patterns are so ingrained to the point that you're not even aware of it even when you are working on it in other areas of your life. A lot of times what happens is that those patterns continue to recycle into the future, into those relationships, even with people that may love you, but maybe you're playing a role. It's not your fault. Let me tell you again, it's not your fault. But you're unconsciously playing a role in attracting situations and people where things happen where you feel like a second-class citizen, or you feel like you're being emotionally neglected, or you tell people what you need and they blow you off, or they tell you that they love you, but then they won't make any changes of any kind in their actions to show that you and what you need and the relationship are a priority. And unfortunately, I'm finding that to be a very prominent situation in my own life. I have struck up a couple of recent friendships where people are so loving and so kind, and they care about how I feel, and they care about they respect me, and they treat me as an equal, and there's no one rule for me and another set of rules for thee kind of thing. Does all of this sound familiar? And meeting you halfway and stuff like that. I'm telling you that stuff can be so ingrained into your life that it's like a cancer. And I'm working on rooting those cancers out in my life. I've ended some long-term relationships. I'm in the process of negotiating some other, when I say long-term, I mean long-term. I'm in the process of negotiating some other long-term relationships. I don't know if they're going to last, if they're going to change, or if they're going to survive, or if they're going to be better. Because if they're not better, I can't keep them. Or I have so many what I call superficial relationships in my life. I'll just be blunt. My relationship with my parents is superficial. I know that they'll never change. I know that they'll never see me and see what I need and be able to make those changes or acknowledge anything that happened. And for me, that's irreconcilable. I can't live a lie. And that, like I said, that's just me. Everybody has to approach this differently. And so there's a lot of people where I see them and I talk to them and I visit them, but there's no real relationship. And I don't even have a word for what you call something like that. Estranged, but still speaking, maybe. But I have a lot of relationships like that in my life, and it's very, very painful. But for me, it's about weighing my conscience. Some people can just cut those people out of their lives and they feel fine. But I also have a lot of pressure from other people to continue those relationships. And it's very difficult to deal with pressure on both sides and no support over a long-term period of time. It's crushing. And sometimes it feels like making those compromises makes it easier to at least not deal with that pressure and then deal with the pain of seeing those people on occasion and recovering from it. I'm not sure that that's the healthiest thing in the world to do, but that's what I've come up with as the only solution I can come up with in certain relationships, because pretty much I would have to eliminate about 80% of the people in my life. And that makes it sound like I'm playing some kind of victim and that there's like these violins playing in the background. But let me tell you something. You can grow up in a family where everything and everyone is dysfunctional. And usually the black sheep of the family, or maybe even the golden child who turns into the black sheep and the scapegoat later on, because they call BS on what's going on. And they say something and they notice it and they note those patterns and they are verbal and vocal about that, and they ask for some kind of correction and corrective behavior and reconciliation, and they don't get that. and that narrative continues, what happens with a family narrative that's been going on for decades is that people will do whatever it takes to maintain that family dynamic. So if you suddenly go in there and stir the pot, you're not going in there to stir the pot to cause drama. You're going in there to try to pull yourself out of that, stop playing that role, stop being treated that way. And in those individual relationships, those chips will fall where they will. Some of those relationships can be saved and maintained and maybe even reconciled. Some of them you may continue the relationship, but it's modified and you have to have more of a distant relationship. And then sometimes those relationships just end and you might only see that person at a family event, or in some cases, if it's that bad, not at all. And so those are things that you have to pray about and decide what you can tolerate. And those dynamics can also change over time. Some people, you might be able to slowly come back into a relationship with them if there's some kind of change. In other cases, they may get worse and you may have to distance yourself more. And in other cases, you may change and you may change what you're willing to tolerate and put up with. But let me tell you this, no human being deserves to be treated with double standards, deserves to be treated like a second-class citizen, deserves to feel like every time you're around somebody, there's this icky feeling that you just feel like you're betraying yourself because you won't say something. You deserve to be true to yourself. And I know some people will say, that's not a Christian value. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't respect your own agency and you don't respect who you are, you can't come to other people from a genuine place of love because you have a lot of unresolved issues. And what I'm finding is that in my relationships, I have a lot of unresolved issues, and I have to take responsibility for those. Is it my fault that other people treat me that way? No. Am I going to be a victim, though, and say that everybody is just this and oh, poor me? No, I'm not going to do that either. What I'm doing is I'm trying to look deeper into those relationships, negotiate with those people, talk to them. In cases where I know the person is just flat out cruel and you can't negotiate, I'm just restructuring how I interact with those people, and I'm not giving them any explanation. I'm going to gray rock the heck out of them. So I'm going through a lot of structural changes in my life and in my relationships. I'm rethinking a lot of fundamental relationships, and it can be really lonely. And, I've always told you that healing is worth it. I will be honest, there's been moments in the last few years, ever since I started healing, my life has been turned upside down in every way, shape, or form. I think some of it just happened to be coincidental, that things in my immediate physical environment and things in the world started upending, like around the time of COVID and all of that, and just a lot of political upheaval and things going on in the world that are unsettling to us who are attuned to that stuff. And the point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes it feels like healing isn't worth it. Sometimes I feel like God has turned his back on me. And I'm just going to be bluntly honest. The last 2 years, I have had struggles with the belief that God even exists, the belief that God loves me, and the belief that God wants good things for me. I've had so many unanswered prayers, like the financial support aspect of continuing to do the podcast without struggling and scraping. And that prayer has not been answered. And I have tried to do things myself to improve my situation and prayed about those. And those prayers have also been not answered. Are there ways that maybe I've fallen short, made mistakes, and screwed up that caused some of that? Sure. Yeah. I can't just blame other people. And I'll be honest, I've blamed God for all of this stuff. And I'm mad at God and I'm struggling because I'm projecting a lot of the unfair and horrible treatment of other people onto God. And I'm still holding on to just a shred of hope that that's not who God really is. And I have been asking and praying for God to show me how to separate what I'm projecting onto God and who God really is. And I'm struggling there. And I just need to slow down and take some time to really dig even deeper into my healing work. There are days where I would just do a meditation and that's it. And it's just not enough. I'm just one of those people. Everybody's different. Some people, a meditation or just 20 minutes a day, that's enough. Everybody's different. You have to figure out what's right. And in my life right now, I'm needing a lot of emotional support, and I'm needing a lot of emotional work because what I'm doing is just not working anymore. And I'm just in a lot of pain. And I love you. I love you all. I love you so much. You're the reason that I get out of bed. A couple of friends that I have are the reasons I get out of bed. The friends that have taught me what love really is. And I had a grandmother who was like that. I thank God for those examples in my life. She was the most wonderful Christian lady I've ever known. She wasn't weak. She would stand up for people, and she would fight back when somebody was being bullied. And I just see a lot of things that are just so inside out and wrong side out now. And being somebody who's a very highly sensitive Christian, there's a lot of people on this platform that are highly sensitive people. You know the term. And if you are one of those people and you're hurting right now because of what you see in the world, I see you. I see you. It's not right. It's not Christian. It's not Christ-like. I'm not going to get into specifics, but on this channel, empathy is a Christian value. It's not a political value. It's a Christian value. It's what Jesus taught. If you read the story of the Good Samaritan, if you read the Beatitudes, if you read the Sermon on the Mount, if you read how Jesus healed the sick, how he interacted with sinners, I see nothing but empathy, 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 empathy. And I see a lot of people not only espousing cruelty, but celebrating it and calling themselves Christians, and it disgusts me. And I'm not going to be specific, and I'm not going to say anything else. But let's just say that there are people on both sides of the aisle that see it and condemn it because we know who Christ is. And I was raised to be like Jesus. And I am woefully fall short of that. Every day I want revenge on somebody. I want to poke at somebody. I want to make fun of somebody who I feel like acts stupid because of how cruel they are. And I want to get revenge on narcissists, and I want to hurt them. And I need to work on my own healing because that's not what this channel stands for, and that's not what I stand for, and that's not what Christ stood for. And I'm falling short in every way, shape, and form. And I apologize, but I'm not going to be able to keep doing this podcast unless something radically changes in the support area on a consistent basis. I'm going to keep doing the podcast. I'm going to keep creating episodes, but I've decided that I need to focus on applying for those jobs that'll pay more and the part-time jobs. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to come back to more in the future, but I may for this year, or at least this part of this year, I'm going to have to cut back to focus on my mental health, to focus on working on myself more thoroughly, to get my relationship with God back on track. I wanted to be transparent with you. I wanted to be vulnerable with you because that's another thing. It's difficult for me to have relationships with people who are not willing to share with me at least a little bit. You don't have to give me your whole life history or share with me everything you're thinking or feeling, but I need some kind of reciprocation. And for me, I just need, this is where I'm at right now. What I'm planning to do with the podcast is put out maybe 10 episodes this year. Try to put out a few YouTube videos. And I'm going to try to work on monetizing the podcast. I may have to find a way to charge for some of the stuff I do. I still want it to be free because I know what it's like to struggle financially and where it's hard to find good resources without paying. I feel you. I understand. Believe me, I understand more than most people. I'm in a couple of programs and there's a part of me that wonders if I should drop out of them because can I afford them? But the question is, can I afford not to invest in myself and do the healing work and try to repair my relationship with God? The answer is no. I need to invest in myself. I need to invest in my relationship with God. And I need to focus on that right now, on the healing. And I want other people to be able to do what I'm doing. And I want to be able to take all the experiences that I've had and give them back to you in the form of something that can help you to heal based on real experience, based on being authentic, based on being vulnerable and honest, based on trying to love everybody. And I screw up at that all the time, and I'm sorry. I do. I'm not always the nicest person on Facebook. I'm not always the best daughter or the best sister or the best cousin or the best friend. I try. But I'm trying to figure out that boundary between self-respect and not being disrespected by people and getting the actual real love that I deserve and not some pseudo form of love. And being kind to people and setting boundaries where I have to and trying to love them and give them what they need to. And negotiating relationships can get very complicated. And a lot of it has to do with how willing people are willing to work with you. And unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of reciprocation in that area. I have had some, and like I said, I've got those 2 dear friends. Thank God for them. Thank God for them. And you know who you are. God bless you. But they have the kindness in their heart that a friend should have. And I do try to find Christian friends. But right now I'm finding on both ends of the spectrum that the kindest people that I'll ever meet are Christians, and the cruelest people that I've ever met are also people that call themselves Christians. And that just perplexes me. I don't know what's happened in our culture, but it's sad. It's really, really sad. I'm not going to get on a soapbox. I'm not going to get political, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life, some plans that I have. I am going to create some kind of membership site this year and focus more time and energy on that than on the free podcast episodes, because this is not sustainable. I can't keep doing this mentally, emotionally, or financially. If you'd like to donate, I will put the links in the show notes. I'm not going to do the plug, but that could help me to be able to get this podcast back on track and maybe even to be able to do more. But right now, I just can't. I'm sorry. I love you, and I want you to know what's going on, and I want you to know that I'm going to keep trying. But right now, I need to focus on getting these areas of my life, financially, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, personally, back on track. And I thank you for understanding. I love you so much. God bless you. Have a great day. And I will have some more podcast episodes out soon. I'm going to be recording at least 1 or 2 in the next couple of weeks. So I'm hoping that I'll at least have 2 or 3 out in the next month or 2. Thank you for your patience. God bless you. Remember, beloveds, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God loves you.